Welcome to another edition of ATL Prime Sports. I'm your host, Jurjevich. Joining me this evening is the one, the only Wayne Ridenauer in Memphis, Tennessee. Todd Corder's out this evening, getting ready for his SIAC Call of the Week on ESPN Plus. And that leads us to the business at ATL Prime Sports, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. You can search us on Apple and Spotify. At JJ Get You One, my personal Twitter, at RWY Jr. for Wayne, and of course at Corder Todd for TC Todd Corder. Wayne, how are you this evening, buddy?
Well, I'm doing pretty good, but one thing I want to mention as far as NASCAR goes is I guess a lot of new fans don't realize that NASCAR drivers have been crashing intentionally and getting in fights for a very long time. And I think Bubba Wallace is getting a little bit of unnecessary heat simply because of who he is. And I think that's a little bit wrong. I think that that's part of the sport is, rough driving sometimes. That's why they got fenders on those cars.
Hey, we all know Cole Trickle said it best, rubbing's racing, baby. I'm doing pretty good, but I'm not doing better than the NFL and Amazon Prime, though, as they have announced a Black Friday game starting in 2023, a Friday afternoon game, not prime time, right in the middle of college football kickoffs.
Weird.
It's all about the money, 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 and I think that takes away from the college football Friday. I think you'll have the Arkansas-Texas matchup eventually once Texas comes in the SEC that day. You'll have some other rivalries. The Egg Bowl went back to Thursday, so you won't have to worry about that one, except for the Thursday NFL game. So it's a money grab, but you know what it's all about, and that's exactly what it is. People are going to tune in by the millions to that Friday, 3 o'clock afternoon, Black Friday NFL football game. What's on tap today? We have Chase Thomas of the Chase Thomas podcast, powered by Blue Wire. He joins us to talk UT's big win, Braves 2023 season outlook, and the Falcons are 3-3. Let's talk about them. College football playoff chaos theories, and of course the pick six. Without further ado, we welcome in our guest, Chase Thomas, writer for the Sports Renaissance Man, also from the Chase Thomas podcast, again powered by Blue Wire. Chase, thanks for coming on. How you doing this evening, man?
Thank you for having me. Things are good. The Vols, I don't know if you heard it. Tennessee is back. People have been saying that Tennessee has been back. So no, feeling pretty good. Undefeated in the Rocky Top, and many are saying that my marriage a month ago that has really been what has launched the Tennessee Volunteers over the last month. Undefeated since I've been married. So it's a good, all things good on Rocky Top. But I appreciate you having me.
That is great, man. We're lucky to have you on. It was a big win Saturday night, 52-49, an absolute thriller. Tell us about the atmosphere in and around Knoxville right now. The Vols are number 3 in the country, and it's the first time in about 15, 16 years they've been in the top 5 or so. Tell us what the atmosphere is like Saturday night and right now going into another big weekend, a home game against UT Martin.
Well, yeah, people, I mean, hey, Ty Sampson's dad coming into town this weekend, the 5-star freshman from Alabama who went to Alabama over to UT a couple years ago for the diehard college football fans familiar with that circumstance there. But no, I mean, it's been great. Like coming into the year, I said one of the things about Heupel, and there's been different folks with different perspectives on what kind of gimmick this was and like, oh, this is the air raid. How is this going to go? And UT, now that we have a full year of tape, what's the offseason going to look like? SEC teams are going to adjust to what Heupel was throwing a lot of folks off with last year. I mean, you saw it in Knoxville the first 2 quarters against Georgia. I mean, Tennessee really put it on them. I'm in there in the building. I remember I made a bet with one of my co-hosts on my show that Tennessee would be leading after the first quarter. And it was just Heupel starts fast, and every single week they are going to be ready. They are going to hit you. They are not afraid to just go right at you and go for the jugular right away. And it's just a breath of fresh air, just being here in Tennessee and to see how electric this offense is. But it's also just they expect to win every week. And that is a big, big leap for a program. When you go into each week, they weren't fazed by Alabama. You hear Saban talk about it where they were kind of just a little off. They didn't have that same heat. I forgot the phrase he used, but they weren't just like singing. They weren't just jumping around before the game. there were real nerves there. And I mean, as I've been in so many of these games inside Neyland, it's a coliseum. It's over 100,000. There's a lot going on. It's a high pressure situation. And Heupel's embraced all of it, and Heupel has utilized. I mean, there is no reason that Tennessee should not be one of the premier college football programs. I mean, even just pro sports programs as a whole. And everything's coming up. I make the joke that we're an everything school now, but Danny White, since he came over from UCF, has just been an absolute delight here in Tennessee. And it's not just with NIL, it's not just with fundraising. I mean, there's just buy-in across the board where you have Kelly Harper at this game, you have Rick Barnes, you have Tony Vitello being invested, you have Peyton coming back, you have so many former VFLs taking part where there's so much collective buy-in that it's just a really, really exciting time to be a Tennessee Volunteer. And that's just a cool thing where it's a year-round just buy-in with everything. Like baseball, yeah, it didn't go the way you wanted to go in the Super Regional, but it was an amazing season, and having been at so many of those games was awesome. I mean, you win the SEC tournament in basketball and baseball. The Lady Vols are in the top 5 going into this year. You just go up and down the list. That's a really, really nice spot to be. You just want to be in the conversation all across the board. And that brings me back to the football team where it's like, I don't think they're going to win the national title, but I think that they're in the conversation for the playoff. They're in the top 7 of, I know Vegas has them, I think 7th or 6th best odds to make the college football championship, which is insane in year 2 for Heupel. But if you go through history, the most recent couple of years, you're seeing this with Lane Kiffin in Oxford, where year 2, he had this big jump and they win 10 games and people are like, oh, wow, this is happening a little bit faster with Kiffin. But it's the portal has changed college football so much where you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt to have these long culture changing rebuilds because you can reinvent your roster in 1 calendar year. Like you can remake this team to be exactly what you want it to be faster than ever. Tennessee was just in a different circumstance because so many guys were gone. Like they had so many scholarships open from last year because so many people left after the debacle from the end of the Jeremy Pruitt era that they were playing down and just overachieved to an unbelievable extent. But then Tennessee was the only team in the Power 5 last year to finish in the top 10 in scoring and not win 10 games. Every other team that finished top 10 in scoring offense last year won 10 games in the Power 5. Tennessee was the only one. And I said coming into this year that if Tennessee is in the top 10 again, I don't see that happening twice. In a sport that is so driven by offensive numbers, by quarterback play, by scoring as many points as humanly possible, I don't see how they don't break through. And it's similar to what Kiffin's doing at Ole Miss that, I mean, offense wins, just amazing play calling wins. Kiffin and Josh have just been phenomenal, top to bottom the last 2 years. And I think they're the 2 most underrated coaches in the conference. And I don't think it's any surprise that both have a real shot of making it to Atlanta in 2 months.
Well said. You mentioned Tennessee has no excuse to not be good at football with the fan base, the stadium, and the boosters they had. You nailed it right on the head. You're listening to Chase Thomas right here on ATL Prime Sports. You can find Chase on Twitter at Chase_Thomas. And of course, you can find them podcasts anywhere podcasts are available. The Chase Thomas podcast powered by Blue Wire. Second question, a potential game of the year candidate upcoming. Maybe game of the century, Chase. Since I've been born, I think this is on paper, though, again, potentially, as long as Georgia, Tennessee both take care of business in the next 2 weeks. Georgia bye week, then Florida. Obviously, UT Martin, then Kentucky. A little tougher schedule for Tennessee. But talk about this upcoming matchup that could be epic, just absolutely epic in Athens. Ticket prices are already starting to surge for that one. But again, as long as UT takes care of business, which I believe they will in the next 2 weeks, let's talk about this upcoming.
Well, your dogs have to take care of business too. You got Florida. There's still some games that Georgia has to take care of as well.
They do. And we all know Georgia has played terrible, except under Kirby Smart in Jacksonville. So hopefully that trend is behind the dogs. But you are right. Georgia still has a TCB in Jacksonville. Florida can run with Anthony Richardson. You're right about that. But let's talk about this. Let's say they both TCB. We're possibly a 1 versus 2 matchup at that point. I think it'll probably be 1-3 because of the bias. They'll put Ohio State in between us or something like that. And I don't like that. I think we're the top 2 teams in the country. That's what I got. But what say
Well,
you?
I
If it's a
think,
one
you
versus
can
two
make the case
matchup,
that Tennessee should have been number 1 in the AP poll this week. I think
they very
4
well
wins versus ranked teams, there was
they had a
enough.
shot to.
Mhm.
I think they deserve it. They had the best resume.
Yeah.
Obviously, one of the best resumes. What is it? 4 AP top 25 wins,
Yes.
2 top 10s now.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you're right about that. This could be a potential big one. Let's break it down real quick while we got you on.
So it's funny, and I think we should bring this into the Alabama game as well, because getting over that hump, the emotional hump for Tennessee fans, and I think this was something I was thinking about a lot of just what what would mean more for Tennessee this year, beating Alabama at home and ending the 15-year streak, or going to Athens and beating Kirby Smart and potentially just railroading their year. And I think the Alabama game meant significantly more to this program, because I think there is still this idea that when Tennessee goes to Athens in a couple weeks, hey, like if we're competitive, we're in it in the fourth quarter, that's a win for us. But if it was at home, it would be a little bit of a different feel, and I think I would be a little bit more optimistic. But I said going into the year, I thought Heupel was going to get one of Bama or Georgia. And then you get Bama here, and just the all-time, that is going to be the best college football game you see this year is Bama Tennessee. Like nothing's topping how that game. I mean, you even have a knuckleball finish over the goalpost, and I mean Hendon Hooker just an absolute warrior. And that game looking like it was going to go the same way it always goes in Tennessee big games. And I'm sure everybody thought the fumble recovery into a touchdown by Dallas Turner. I looked at my wife and I was like, that's it. I cannot believe this is how this is going to happen again. This is so stupid. And Heupel doesn't flinch. And I mean, 2 big plays, Ramel Keaton on the first play, and then he follows that up by going to Brew McCoy deep again. Just no fear every single time. So I say that to say they're not going to be scared going into Athens. Like, they're not going to be terrified of the Georgia team that we've seen. Like, you've seen more of Georgia football this year than I have, but struggling against Kent State at home, struggling, I mean, to this point against Mizzou on the road. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this Georgia team. I don't think they have the same issues that Alabama has. And Alabama has just the playmaker problem out wide. You still have a Brock Bowers. And Brock Bowers is a difference maker that, let me tell you, as someone who watches every snap of this Tennessee defense, they do not have an answer for Brock Bowers out wide. There's nobody for Brock Bowers. I think Ladd McConkey is someone who should have a really good afternoon against the Vols at home. But I want to see us get healthy. Like, we had, I kid you not, a walk-on cornerback on the last series against Alabama. So
Tillman either. Still no Tillman.
Tillman, but it's funny you bring up Tillman, because I mean, he hasn't been there the LSU win, he hasn't been there for the Florida win, and he hasn't been there for the Alabama win. So I could say, yeah, it's going to be a big help to have him back for that one, but the offense hasn't really missed him. And that's not to say Cedric Tillman is not an awesome football player. It just speaks more to Hendon Hooker being able to adapt, because he was targeting Cedric Tillman so much. 30% of his passes were going to Cedric Tillman before he left the lineup. I think the matchup to watch with Georgia, and what will be different about Georgia Tennessee versus Georgia Alabama, is Brock Bowers. I will just be zoned in, because it's kind of like that Kyle Pitts cheat code from a couple of years ago, where Georgia just did not have an answer for Kyle Pitts on the wheel routes. I don't think Tennessee will have an answer for Brock Bowers, but what I do think is Stetson will have to beat Tennessee through the air, because Tennessee has the number 2 run defense in the SEC. They're averaging a little under 3 yards per carry. Anyone trying to run against the Vols, Jahmyr Gibbs, incredible last Saturday. Can't say enough about Gibbs, who's just an awesome football player. But I don't think Georgia has the guys back there anymore. Kendall Milton's never healthy. We'll wait and see with Edwards. I don't really know if Georgia has the running backs right now to put a lot of pressure on this Tennessee defense the way Jahmyr Gibbs did. So I think if Georgia beats Tennessee, it's because Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey and maybe A.D. Mitchell have a field day, and Tennessee can't keep up. But anyone who thinks that this game's not going to be close and it's going to be a breakaway in the second half by Georgia like it was a season ago, I don't think that's coming. I think you're going to really, really have to force turnovers in the way that Alabama did, and you're going to have to throw a lot on this Tennessee defense if you're going to beat them, because Hendon Hooker is going to be in New York. That's done. Hendon Hooker is going to be a Heisman finalist. those guys are hard to
Yeah.
beat on any given Saturday. And Hendon Hooker is an absolute warrior, and he's going to take Georgia to the end of it. I'm terrified of the Brock Bowers matchup.
Brock Bowers is a beast. I think he's the best player in college football. I'm not being
Mm.
biased there. I think a tight end should be able to win the Heisman. He should at least have a shot at it. But this matchup should be epic. You hit every component on the head. Heupel's going to have these guys ready to go for 60 minutes. And Georgia's got to be ready for that speed offense. Like you said last year, it was just getting going, starting to click at the end of the year. Now we see it. It's full-fledged. You're going to get 60 minutes of action from Hendon Hooker, receivers. Brew McCoy, I really like Brew McCoy. I think he's a great receiver, good route tree, everything about him I like. So it should be an epic matchup.
Jalen Hyatt, 6 receptions, 5 TDs.
I know. I mean, Hyatt had 5. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, against Alabama, I don't think I've ever seen a receiver have a field day like he did in my lifetime.
I mean, it's just the Alabama is just not who they've been, and I think people just have to adjust. Like Quinn Ewers was doing the same thing in the first quarter,
Yes,
a month ago, and if he doesn't go down, I think Texas beats Alabama at that point. But they're struggling with A&M, they're struggling all across the board. This is not the same Alabama team that folks have been accustomed to. And I think you have to readjust how you see this Alabama team. They're not the same. They are more than beatable. I think Alabama has significantly more problems than Georgia. Like you have a Malachi Starks back there. You have guys in that secondary who I'm far more fearful of to keep up with a Jalen Hyatt or a Cedric Tillman or whoever. Like, I mean, Bo Nix had a nightmare, and he's completing 70% of his passes. Oregon's rolling since the Georgia game, but they got absolutely obliterated by Georgia. So I don't know. I think Georgia is now being a little undervalued because I think they made just the slog of the winning a championship. You play the big one against Oregon, blow them out. You kind of prove like, hey, this is still college football runs through us, and you don't get up for games at Mizzou. I mean, Kirby talked about like every game's a big one against Georgia, and you're getting every team's best game week over week because you're the hunted now. You're not hunting anybody else. Georgia is the hunted, and I think that is something that they're having to get used to. But I think Georgia is still the top echelon in this conference, and I think I don't know how this goes in a couple weeks, but Tennessee beating Georgia on the road and Alabama at home, beating Florida at home, going to Baton Rouge in the same year. If we don't win the national championship under those circumstances, I don't know if Tennessee ever wins the national title in my lifetime.
Well, I'll ask you a quick question. Do you think Alabama rebounds? It's tough for me to see them win in the West with the penalties issue. I mean, it's like 15 against Texas. What was it, 16 or 17 against Tennessee? I think there was 10 accepted penalties. They have 66 accepted penalties against them this year. Absolutely, it blows away the second closest team, I think, by like 4 or 5 penalties. It's nuts. I've never seen a Saban team like this. Do you think they rebound and win the West, Chase?
I think we'll learn a lot this weekend because Ole Miss has to play LSU, and Ole Miss beating LSU in back-to-back years is going to be wild because, I mean, LSU, big win against Florida over the weekend. I don't think that that's going to be a cakewalk by any means. But if they can get through that one, I think Ole Miss has got a real shot. I think they're going to win 10 games again, which, again, Lane Kiffin getting 10-win seasons back-to-back in Oxford is insane. Like, I don't think people understand. Go back through the history of Ole Miss football. That is not something Ole Miss does. And, I mean, like I've said this on other podcasts, but I think Ole Miss fans, you got to be praying right now that Auburn does not come hard at Lane Kiffin, because I think that's been my gut, is that's where he ends up, and you do not want Lane Kiffin anywhere near Auburn, because that's a game changer for that program. But that's a conversation for another day. I think Alabama can absolutely rebound. I think they still have the talent. Bryce Young is still absolutely insane, and that will be forgotten about with the loss against Tennessee, is that Bryce Young had one of the best college football games I've ever seen too. He took so many shots, got right back up, very Patrick Mahomesy in the way he moves around in the pocket, and he doesn't look to run. He's still looking for somebody in the back of the end zone. He had one play where he found the Bama tight end, and he's just running and running and running, and you think he's gonna, like, I thought he had an angle to just run it in and beat Aaron Beasley, I think it was, and he just at the top. He's just too good to count out Alabama. Like, Bryce Young is still one of the best quarterbacks in this country, and I can't count them out. I just think Ole Miss is right there. I don't think there's anyone else in the West that can get there if it's not Ole Miss. So I think the odds are still pretty good. I would go Bama winning the West at this point.
Again, you're listening to Chase Thomas right here on ATL Prime Sports. You can find Chase at Twitter at Chase_Thomas. And a final question of the evening.
Also, wait, one last thing. Can I just say,
yeah, go ahead.
Don't we want Tennessee Ole Miss in the SEC title game? Don't we want Lane Kiffin in the mustard golf ball incident actually in Atlanta, the rematch of all
that would
rematches?
Be interesting.
Isn't that like the ratings for that one alone? This is what you want as a college football fan, or even just an SEC fan. I understand Georgia fans want to be there, Bama fans want to be there, but if that's not an option, isn't the one thing everybody should want for is Lane Kiffin versus Tennessee, right?
Yeah, we don't.
I would watch it, and golf ball sales and mustard sales would probably spike.
Exactly. It would be must-see TV, and Lane would be phenomenal, and it would just be an awesome game. That's what I'm pulling for.
Absolutely.
But I might be biased.
Question for you, Chase. Give me a college football playoff chaos theory, because there are some good ones that could play out here over the next 6-7 weeks.
Chaos theory is probably that Ohio State, what happens when Ohio State loses? So Ohio State's going to Penn State in a couple weeks, and I have that one earmarked. Like if they go down there and they're a one-loss Big Ten champion, because I think if they get Purdue or they get whoever in the Big Ten West, like they're still going to win. And I have Ohio State at home beating Michigan this year. I don't think they lose back-to-back years against the Wolverines. I'm not a believer in J.J. McCarthy through the air to this point. Great running game with Blake Corum and company, but I don't believe they'll be able to keep pace through the air with that one. But I look at the chaos theory of like if Tennessee, not to bring it back to Tennessee, but I think the best thing for them in a way is to lose to Georgia, beat Kentucky at home, go to South Carolina, go to Vanderbilt, win those, finish 11-1. Georgia has to go at 12-0 against the Tide. They beat the Crimson Tide, and or even if they lose, what do you do if Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC title game? Tennessee beat Alabama in the regular season. Both schools are one's 11-1, one's 12-1. What do you do with that? And then an 11-1 Georgia. Like, how do you put all three in? I
would.
I mean, that's the thing. Is like there's a possibility that there's going to be an 11-1 SEC team that's left out of the college football playoff.
Correct. It's absolutely crazy. You got to expand the playoff for this reason right here. This is probably the most parity I've seen in college football since the 2007 season, when you had number one lose 3 straight weeks. The last weeks 9, 10, 11, and or 11, 10, 11, 12 at West Virginia, Missouri, Kansas. They all went down, flip-flopping. That was a crazy season. So, yeah, I see another one. I'll talk about it later in the show, but I'll tell you about it. What if there's 5 unbeaten Power 5 conference champions, Chase?
Who are the 5?
UCLA, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, and TCU run the table, and you have 5
out. We can go ahead and kick them out. Like they're not getting it in the 4. I don't think the committee's going to put TCU in.
I think you're right. I think you'd have to go with UCLA and their wins over Oregon and Utah.
And also, they will never say it, but the market matters, and you want the Los Angeles, Southern California market if you're going to do that. But also, I'm pretty in on the UCLA team. Like we're going to see what they're going to do this weekend against Oregon, which is probably the game of the weekend. I know that's where game day is, but DTR's been awesome. I'm a big believer. Their defense is much improved from a year ago. No, I think that would be wild. That would obviously not help the SEC if you have that many undefeated teams going into the College Football Playoff. But these things, we do this in the middle of this year every year, where we're like, oh, what's going to happen when everyone's undefeated? It's like, no, someone's going to go down. Ohio State at Penn State might happen. UCLA, I actually had them losing this weekend at Oregon. I mean, I think a lot of this will clear itself up, but it is funny. Because wouldn't you say right now that, I mean, I would say right now, and I don't know if you guys agree, but I think we've already kind of figured out who the top 4 teams in the country are. I think we already know, don't we? Like, I don't think much is going to change in the next couple of weeks.
Pretty close.
I think it's Georgia. I think it's Tennessee. I think it's Ohio State. And I think, who am I blanking on? Michigan. I think those are the 4. I think those are the 4 best teams in the country right now. And people throw out Clemson. I'm like, look at DJ Uiagalelei's his numbers when he is not playing Power 5. He's on the road. His completion percentage is about 70 at home, 60% on the road. It's just, I'm never going to be a full Clemson guy. And it's funny because they have the longest win streak in college football, but I'm still not quite there with the Tigers and company. But I don't know. I think it's fun. This is why you play games. This is important. This is the best part of it. Is like you play games, and I think a lot of this will be settled on the field, which is what you want.
Exactly. Wayne, any comments, questions for our guest Chase here?
Well, I just hope that Tennessee can get through their UT versus UT scrimmage game without any injuries. That would be
We can't have any more injuries, Wayne. You say no more injuries. We're down to walk-ons at corner, so I don't think it can get any worse on the injury front. I shouldn't even say that. Knock on wood here. Let's hope not. I hope Hendon Hooker, because that's the thing about Heupel. He plays guys a lot. He doesn't pull them in blowouts. That's not really been his MO. So we'll see.
Right. Well, I'm familiar with his MO because Memphis has had to face Central Florida plenty of times.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm familiar.
What happened to Memphis a couple weeks ago, by the way? That loss to Houston at home? What was that? Like the late blow? Oh my goodness. That was an all-timer.
No, that's typical Memphis, and that's why the Liberty Bowl is about 40% full at the most.
So Silverfield, not the guy you don't think?
It could be that. It could just be that the quarterback, since he had such a great first year, this year he got a little bit too full of himself, and I don't think he's trying quite as hard.
Where's Paxton Lynch when you need him?
Yeah, really. Well, where's Paxton Lynch, period?
Come back.
There you go. What was the quarterback's name? The big dude, fast, long, who was at Tennessee and transferred to Memphis. What was his name? With the tats. What was his name?
I want to say he's the one that ended up in Denver, wasn't he?
Was that Paxton? I thought there was another guy.
That was Paxton. Yeah.
I thought there was someone else. I'm thinking of somebody else. It's not Paxton. I don't know what the other Memphis quarterback was, but
just like UT, Memphis is a basketball school. So I talked about it last show. I already got my season tickets in line, ready to download.
Do you like the court? Do you like the colors and all that over the court? The gray, the blue?
It's all right. My main concern is that I had to move my season tickets from section that was right there parallel to the floor over to the side because I could not see over the people sitting on the sideline, and I kept thinking people were out of bounds when they weren't. But my new seats are a little bit catty corner, and I can see the full court, and that's really all I care about.
There you go. I've never been to a Memphis basketball game in Memphis. I was going to go recently to that game in Nashville getting canceled was rough because
really
last minute cancellation and all those folks who made the trip, that was a nightmare.
Right.
But sorry for steering it to Memphis. I apologize.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
No, we love it. We love it, Chase. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on, man. I know you're running out of time here. Before we let you go, tell our listeners how they can catch you on social media and your podcast and listen to it.
Yeah, just follow me at Chase_Thomas on Twitter. That would be great. All kinds of stuff on that front. Read me, sportsrenaissanceman.substack.com. Write a lot over there. The podcast is daily. All kinds of different guests each and every day on the Chase Thomas podcast, wherever you get your podcast. We actually have a YouTube page that continues to grow, youtube.com/Chase Thomas podcast. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. As we fill that show page up each and every day. But yeah, NBA, college football head coaches, NBA GMs, NFL players, all that, NFL analysts. Like we cover it all on the podcast, and it's my favorite thing. It's talking all things sports, just like you guys. So we're all trying to figure it out and do our best. And I appreciate you guys making the time for me today.
All right.
Hey, we appreciate you having us, coming on our show, our platform here. And Chase, let's do it again sometime soon, man, and talk some Braves.
Absolutely. Let me know.
Yes, sir. Chase Thomas of the Chase Thomas podcast, powered by Blue Wire. Thanks again, Chase. We'll talk to you soon, man. All right, guys, that wraps up our interview with Chase Thomas. Let's quickly go into the Major League Baseball discussion here. 3 100-plus win teams from the National League, and not one of them are in the LCS. What a freaking playoffs, huh? The 5 and 6 seeds are in the LCS right now, and the Padres, as I speak right now, just tied the NLCS up at 1 apiece. While the 2 top seeds in the American League just cruised right on into the playoffs. Well, maybe not cruised. But the Yankees took care of the Guardians. It's now Yankees-Astros in the LCS. Let's talk some MLB postseason. But first, we got to talk about our beloved Bravos. What happened to the Braves, Wayne? The two things that can't happen happened. Their starting pitching, bye.
Yeah.
Most of their team hitting, bye. Went out the wayside. Things that you saw in the 101 win season didn't add up in the NLDS. I don't know if it was the 6 days off and not facing live pitching. I don't know if it was the Phillies were hot and they were playing good ball to get into the playoffs at the end. I really don't know. I don't know if it was Max Fried getting sick, Spencer Strider getting hurt, Ozzie Albies breaking his pinky. It could have been a lot of things. But their starting pitching and their team hitting ceased to exist in the LDS. Dansby Swanson, Austin Riley, Michael Harris went a combined 4 for 45 with a single extra base hit between the three of them. And I honestly don't even know who got that extra base hit. I'm pretty sure it was probably Dansby, because I only remember Michael Harris getting a single, but I don't even know. That's how far away the offense was for the Atlanta Braves in this series. Look, Fried, Strider, Morton, I mentioned it. The starting pitching didn't show up. 14 runs they allowed over just 7 2/3 inning of starting pitching. Kyle Wright pitched a gem. Looks like he could be our ace coming into next year. I mean, this is crazy. 101 win team. Everything you think they do correctly, they did bad. They didn't field very well. Had a couple errors in that series that were very costly. But look, the Braves only led 4 of the 36 innings they played in the LDS. And this Braves club joins the 1997, 1998, 2002, and 2003 teams to win 100-plus games and not reach the World Series. You can tell I'm still a little flustered, Wayne. Still a little flustered by this one. The Braves have not won a series in which they have trailed since 1996. I could keep going, but I don't think I want to anymore. I think our listeners got the point. The Braves offense ceased to exist. Pitching, bad, minus Kyle Wright. Bullpen did okay to keep us in some of those games. I shouldn't say us, the Braves. Keep the Braves in it when they needed to. Absolutely wounded duck in the LDS. And that's about all I got to say, Wayne. We'll move on. I'll ask the question here to the listeners. What does Alex Anthopoulos need to do to keep this thing going next season? I think the biggest question to address is the closer situation, since Kenley Jansen's going to be a free agent. And, of course, in the infield, shortstop Dansby Swanson, the Marietta, Georgia, Kennesaw, Georgia, Marietta High School native, is a free agent. How do you address those needs is what Alex Anthopoulos' biggest question is in the offseason. Do you slide Raisel Iglesias over from a setup role to a closer role because he is under contract for the next year or so? Or do you go get a big-time closer like you had the last 2 or 3 years with Will Smith and Jansen? It's a big question to ask. I think Swanson's the number one priority. I think you have to sign the hometown kid. He had a 5.7 wins above replacement, meaning basically the next best player, he's just that much better than. He's an all-star. He's probably going to win a Gold Glove this year. I think you have to bring that back. I think that's number one. And that's basically all I think Alex Anthopoulos needs to concentrate on is filling that shortstop role. Now, there are some free agents out there. You have Xander Bogaerts that could possibly opt out of his contract. Carlos Correa has already opted out of that contract. And you do have Trey Turner as a free agent. So there are some sweet shortstops out there. And you would be hard-pressed as a GM and not doing your job if you didn't reach out to the other big guys and see if they weren't trying to come and play with Acuna, Albies, Riley, Strider, Harris, Grissom, this young core. Travis d'Arnaud, too, who's really rebounded his career down here. Who wouldn't want to come play with that? Alex Anthopoulos, your job, one, sign Dansby Swanson, or find a better replacement, which would be Trey Turner, Xander Bogaerts, or Carlos Correa. And that's how you improve this team. Wayne, any comments on the Braves before we move to the rest of the LCS series?
Well, I think they just looked maybe physically and mentally worn out. Maybe that was part of the problem. Next year, once you get into the playoffs, start focusing on how you can keep the momentum going.
You mentioned worn out. Alex Anthopoulos said it too. You know, a lot of players were hurt, banged up at the end of the year. No Duval. He's going to be a free agent too. But yeah, going into both postseasons, losing player and player and player after injury after injury after injury. Got to address that. But again, I just mentioned it. ALCS Yankees Astros game 1 underway right now in Houston, where the defending AL champs have home field advantage. Game 2 is Thursday at 7:37 on TBS. I just mentioned it. Phillies Padres tied up now. Philly won game 1 2-0. Bryce Harper, 4th home run this postseason. Kyle Schwarber got on the board with a home run this postseason. Zach Wheeler, 7 scoreless. Bullpen took over, finished out a 1-hitter. Game 2, again, Padres just had a 5-run 5th inning that really put them in the lead, 8-5. Again, series tied up. My World Series prediction, I do. I think the Phillies are going to win this series. I think the Phillies are going to stay hot. It's going to be Phillies-Yankees. And I got the Yankees winning in 6. I got them ending their championship drought. Wayne, any thoughts on the World Series and who might win it?
Well, I hesitate to say this, but the Phillies kind of remind me of the St. Louis Cardinals that one year that they came into the postseason through the wild card and ended up winning the whole thing. And I'm not that big of a Phillies fan, nor am I a fan of the.
That one hurts right here, Wayne.
Yeah. Well,
That's 2012. That's the infield fly rule.
yeah. Well, St. Louis ended up beating Texas in that series too. So
They did. It was an interesting series. Ron Washington didn't get the W. We're speaking Ron Washington may not be third base coach next year. Interested in, I should say, the White Sox are interested in attaining him as possible manager next year.
yeah, be a
So
good
that
pick.
should be another off-season storyline the Braves should have to look out for. But again, recap: Braves lose. Phillies Pods tied up. Yankees Astros going on. LCSs are underway. I got the Phillies Yankees in 6. I think the Phils will win this LCS in 7 games. NFL time, NFL. Quick hits. Falcons are 3-3, got a little banged up in the win versus the 49ers. Let's talk some dirty birds real quick. Atlanta lost cornerback Casey Hayward. Horrible loss. It's going to be costly for the Falcons moving forward. He will go on IR. Who's the next man up? It's going to be Darren Hall out of San Diego State, 4th-round pick in 2021. Played well in Hayward's absence. 2 tackles, 2 pass breaks up. A.J. Terrell was shaken up in Sunday's win too, but he seems to be okay and should be on the field for the Bengals game Sunday afternoon in Cincy, where we will pick that in the pick 6. Wayne, your quick thoughts on the 3-3 Falcons and their upcoming game this weekend in Cincy?
Well, I wish they would have been 4-2 at this point, but 3-3 is not too bad. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the season.
Yeah, I am too. It should be very fun. Let's get into some college football playoff talk. First college football playoff rankings will be unveiled Tuesday, November 1st. What would your top 10 look like? We'll have TCs floating around the screen. I'll go ahead and have Wayne read off TC's top 10 for you. I'll go ahead and give you mine. If the rankings came out today for the college football playoff, here's how my top 10 would work. Georgia, Tennessee, 1-2. Ohio State, Clemson, 3-4. Michigan, Ole Miss, 5-6. TCU, UCLA, 7-8. Syracuse, 9. Alabama, 10. Notice I didn't put Oregon in there because of that 49-3 debacle in the opening part of the season against the Dogs on a neutral site. I don't care what anybody says. It's a neutral site if it isn't at a home or home advantage. Got Alabama at 10. They should have 3 losses. Very well could have 3 losses against A&M. Quinn Ewers goes down in Texas. They kick a last-second field goal, but they also still could be unbeaten very much too. Kicker, I forget his name, Reichard, I believe is his name. I'm blanking on his name right now. Missed a kick in the Tennessee game. Had the distance just very a little bit wide right, or else they could be unbeaten right now. So that's my top 10. Wayne, what say you? And then we'll we'll have TC's floating around, but go ahead and say it too.
Well, I'll go ahead and list off TC's real quick. I won't have any comments because I don't know what he was thinking, but here goes. He's got Tennessee number 1, Ohio State number 2, Michigan number 3, Georgia 4, Clemson 5, Alabama 6, TCU 7, Ole Miss 8, UCLA 9, and Syracuse 10.
Yeah, I got Syracuse ranked simply unbeaten. That's why I have them ahead of Alabama right now. I wish it was more cutthroat in that aspect for the first couple rankings. I think if you're undefeated at this point in the season, you should be rewarded for that. That's why I have Syracuse there. Let's talk about the chaos theory. And Wayne, go ahead and give your top 10 real quick before we get into that.
It's funny because all of our top 10s have the same teams, but just in different orders. I've got Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Tennessee 3, Ohio State 4, Clemson 5, Ole Miss 6, Alabama 7, UCLA 8, TCU 9, and Syracuse 10.
It's a good top 10. It's a good top 10. Like I said, I think if you're undefeated, you deserve to be in the top 10 at this point. I honestly think the college football playoff rankings should come out about halfway through the season.
Yeah,
I think
the first one.
Start doing that now. Yeah, the first one. I think the first one should come out in the halfway through the season to kind of get these things in line. Let's talk about a couple playoff chaos theories. I mentioned one with Chase earlier. Great interview, by the way. Really enjoyed having Chase on. Folks, if you like the content, if you're interested, you like it, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and follow us on Apple, Spotify, at ATL Prime Sports. What would be a chaos theory for the College Football Playoff Committee? I said it earlier and I'll say it again. If there are 5 unbeaten Power 5 teams, that would be very, very tough for the committee to decide. Chase mentioned TCU would be out, but that would be wins over Texas. That'd be wins over Texas Tech, Kansas State. Very good football teams. So I think you can't dismiss the fact that if there's 5 undefeated Power 5 champions, that would be a chaotic theory that not a lot of people have talked about. Everybody goes with, and we mentioned it with Chase as well, a 3-11-1 teams from the SEC. They all be deserving of getting in, absolutely. And this is what I would love to be a fly on the wall in the College Football Playoff Committee boardroom, war room, whatever you want to call it, because that would be very interesting to me. Wayne, what say you about a college football playoff chaos theory?
Well, my chaos theory, it goes almost 180 degrees away from yours. What if the only undefeated team in college football is UCLA and everybody else has 1 or 2 losses? Then you're going to have a massive group vying for those last 3 spots, and that's pretty chaotic.
Yeah, that'd be pretty chaotic. And that would probably include a scenario where you have 3-11-1 SEC teams.
Yeah, or maybe only 1 11-1. What if the only 11-1 team is Ole Miss? What if they go undefeated, lose in the SEC championship, and Georgia loses to Tennessee, but then Tennessee turns around and loses to South Carolina? I mean, it could happen.
I mean, anything can happen. Anything can happen. That's our point. It's a chaos theory for a reason. There's no wrong answers here. It's all fun and games. Any final thoughts on chaos theory or your top 10, Wayne?
No, I just I feel the most confident going forward about UCLA, obviously.
Well, let's go ahead and start pick 6. 6 games picked with Monday's spread. We're doing the 5 ranked matchups again and 1 NFL. Again, Monday spreads, folks. Let's try and win you some money. We would have done it last week. Wayne and I both went 4-2. TC went 3-3. Wayne, this may be the best season we've all had up until this one point. You're 23-17. Todd and I are both at 500 at 20-20-2. 23-17-2 for you. Let's go ahead and get into it, man. TCs will be floating around, and you can announce TCs. I'll go ahead and tee this thing off with Syracuse, number 14, 6-0, travels to Death Valley, number 5, Clemson and Memorial Stadium. Clemson 7-0. Clemson's a 13-point favorite. Over-under in that one is 51 in a hook. 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ABC. Wayne, What say you?
Well, I'm taking Syracuse in the points on this one. I don't think. Well, I'm just going to say I'm going to take Syracuse in the points on this one because there's a chance Clemson wins, but I just don't think they cover. And as far as TC's picks go, I have not received those, so those will be.
Oh, okay. I'll read them. I got them
Okay,
right here.
cool.
So TC is picking Clemson to cover.
Oof,
Um,
that's a lot
he
of
thinks
points.
it's a lot of points. It's a tough one for me to pick. Both teams come in with top 30 defenses in terms of scoring. Clemson 19 and a little over 19 and a half points allowed, 26th. Syracuse, believe it or not, top 7 defense coming in at 6th with 13.2 points allowed. I really want to lean towards the orange right here.
Which one?
Which I really do, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to take Clemson at home simply because they are at home and Syracuse hasn't played as tough of a schedule. I just think Dabo's going to have his players ready to go. I think Murphy, Brise will be in the backfield quite often. And I think Will Shipley will be able to run the ball on the Syracuse Orange defense. And I think Clemson will pull away real late. It'll be a 14-point win. UCLA 6-0, number 9, heads to Austin Stadium in Eugene, Oregon to face number 10, the Oregon Ducks at 5-1. Oregon's a 6.5-point home favorite. Over under in this one, a whopping 70.5. 3:30 p.m. Both teams 3-0 in Pac-12 play, and both teams are coming off a bye. Wayne, what say you?
Well, I've kind of already shown my hand on this. I'm taking UCLA to cover on this one. I just or am I taking UCLA in the points? Whatever I'm doing, I'm picking UCLA to win the whole thing because I'm also an Auburn fan and I don't trust Oregon's quarterback.
I hear you. UCLA in the points is a pretty good pick, as I did the same thing. Wow, I thought I'd be the only one to really pick that. UCLA and Chip Kelly are on a roll, averaging over 41 points a game. Their only scare of the season was against South Alabama, where they had a walk-off field goal at the end of that one. The Ducks come in hot, winners of 5 straight after dropping the opener to UGA. Look, give me DTR. Quarterback's awesome. Darrell Robinson and Zach Cabernet, the running back, well over 600 yards on the ground. Between the two of them, they average over 6 yards a carry, which is pretty impressive. I like UCLA in the points. PC is taking the Ducks to cover. Number 3 game of the weekend, number 20, Texas 5-2 at number 11, Oklahoma State 5-1. Texas is a 6-point favorite. Over under, and that one's 64.5. 3:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC. Quarterback Quinn is back, and he will light up the Oklahoma State defense that has struggled lately. My pick of Oklahoma winning the Big 12 dies with this pick. I'm taking Texas to cover, Wayne. What say you, buddy?
Well, I've been picking Cowboys in the points all year long, so I'm going to go ahead and keep up with it. I'm taking Oregon State, or not Oregon State, I'm sorry.
Oklahoma State?
Yeah.
Oklahoma State plus the points.
Right.
We're going with the mullet. And it really kills me to go against this pick because I really feel like if Mike Gundy, I'm a man 40, wins this game, they're going to win the Big 12. I think this is the key point of that game. TC's taking OK State in the points. He's taking the mullet as well. Let's go to our let's see. I was going to say go to our other Big 12 matchup, but we're not. We're going to go to the SEC first. We're going by time, basically. Number 24, Mississippi State. They're 5-2. Going to Tuscaloosa, facing a mad Alabama team. Number 6, 6-1 Alabama. Again, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama's a 21-point favorite. Over under 61 and a hook. 7 p.m. on ESPN. Wayne, what say you?
Well, I'm taking Alabama to cover on this, and I think they're going to cover easily. But I'm actually, as far as this game goes, I'm more interested in what Mike Leach is going to say after the game.
Might give some marital advice. Mississippi State in the points for TC. For me, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Expect a lot of penalties in this game, as Alabama and Mississippi State both have combined for over 100 accepted penalties this season. 66 for Bama, 48 for Mississippi State. Alabama owns Mississippi State. I mean, absolutely owns Mississippi State over the last
It's not
4
really an
years.
away game. It's not really an away game for Mississippi State because they're right across the river from each
No,
other.
it's actually the closest two SEC schools
Yeah.
together. It's actually very close.
Yeah.
But you're right about that. Mississippi State will travel well, but I see Alabama being upset. Again, they've outscored Mississippi State the last 4 years, 152-16. Saban's 9-1 after a loss at Alabama. Also, I feel like Bama will rebound in a huge way and play their best game of the season. I like Alabama to cover. I do.
Yeah.
I got it down. And Todd, again, is taking the Bulldogs, the other Bulldogs, and the points. Our fifth and final college game, number 17, Kansas State, 5-1 at number 8, TCU, 6-0. TCU's a 5-point favorite. There's 59, 8 p.m. Both teams unbeaten in Big 12 play at 3-0. TCU obliterated Oklahoma 55-25. Kansas State and the Sooners played a close one. Wildcats were winners 41-24 there. I couldn't think of anything else, so TCU covers because they beat Oklahoma by more. That's all I got.
Yeah. Well, I'm taking TCU to cover as well.
They're fast and they're furious.
And
I like
they're at home.
Max Duger, and I think the offense is just so fast and it's so hard to keep up with. I'm with you. I really couldn't get a grasp on this game. Todd, TC Corder, has TCU as well, dagnabbit. None of us are going to win a game on Todd there. Last game's the NFL game. Wayne, your final thoughts on that TCU game, buddy?
Well, they're at home, and anytime they play around in Fort Worth, it's just hard to beat them.
It's hard to beat them. Falcons 3-3, Bengals 3-3. Cincinnati's a home 6-point favorite. Over under 47 and a hook on this one. 1 p.m. on Fox. Both teams coming in winners 3 of 4. Pretty impressive, I thought. But look, to me, I don't want to pick against the Falcons. They let me down last time I picked against them. Falcons are down a cornerback in Casey Hayward. He went to IR. Still down Patterson. I don't see those two players and the impact that they both made on the football field allowing. I just don't see that being good for Atlanta. I think Cincinnati and Joe Burrow get it going. I think they win by a touchdown, but it's very close. Give me the Bengals to cover. I hate doing that. Wayne, you got the Falcons?
Oh, absolutely. Our Falcons in the points. I don't know. That's just I'm a Falcons fanatic, I guess.
That's fine. And they're unbeaten against the spread, Wayne, and you have every right to pick it because they're a pretty good team. People need to look and say, hey, they're a top 10 offense. They're a top 5 rushing team. They can get the ball down into anybody's red zone. They got Younghoe Koo who can make crucial kicks. I like Atlanta. I do not think it's a bad pick. The only reason I'm going with Joe Burrow, Casey Hayward, and Cordell Patterson both out on IR. I expect him to take full advantage.
I kind of have
Go ahead.
I kind of have a little bit of a connection with that Atlanta team as well, and their big seeming turnaround with this new coach. Is Arthur Smith is the son of FedEx founder Fred Smith, and my son is a new hire at FedEx, so that's kind of a connection there. In fact, he's at work right now and won't be home till tomorrow morning.
Well, that's awesome. Well, congratulations. I love Arthur Smith grabbing the beer with the offensive lineman under certain stipulations after the home win on Sunday. TC is taking the Bengals to cover as well. That wraps up our pick 6. Closing thoughts, comments. The NBA season tipped off Tuesday night with the Celtics beating the Sixers and the Warriors beating the Lakers. Atlanta Hawks tipped off right when we tipped off this show pretty much against Houston at home in State Farm Arena. That's my final thought. Wayne, what's your final thought of the evening?
Yeah, well, Memphis is ahead of New York right now. They're playing here in Memphis, so that's good for the Grizz. That's my final thought.
I like it. It's a great final thought. Local basketball teams are great final thoughts. For Wayne, I'm JJ. For Todd Corder, who's on a conference call, this was ATL Prime Sports. If you like the content, please subscribe, give us a ring on the bell, and give us a thumbs up on Apple and Spotify with the follow as well. Again, for Wayne, I'm JJ. See you next week. Get you one.